it's Drybear, and today I want to ask and answer a simple question: is Arc Raiders worth your time? It is not free to play, you won't have to put up a purchase price, and it is one of those games that, you know, it kind of curious. Is it good? Is it bad? Should I play it? Should I not? Or should I focus on other games that I'm looking at? And again, I'm just one man, this is my opinion, you know, so if you have your opinion, drop that down in the comments. You're welcome to discuss or talk with other people. Is it good or not? Toss your opinion down below. Now, if I was just a regular gamer pedestrian, I would actually have no notes for this game. I think in general, this is the kind of game that I think developers should be releasing nowadays. What do I mean by that? What I mean is they had a vision of what they wanted the game to be, and they delivered on it. And I think that regardless of whether you like the game or not, this is what I like to see from developers. It doesn't come with that same level of, like, you know, they're just doing it for profit or it feels kind of hollow. They obviously had a vision of what they wanted the game to be. There's some things about the game, like I think that the character designs are very like retro 90s, you know, Ghostbuster kind of goofy. I don't really like the character designs that much subjectively, but it doesn't bother me. Like, I don't really care that much. And I think in general, the game overall, like, it fits the vibe they're looking for. It runs really well comparatively to most games nowadays. And it also just looks great too. So like, I think we're gonna discuss like some of the systems, the game design, where the product sits on the market right now. But I think in general, whether you like it or not, I love it when developers do this kind of thing, and that they have an idea, they like what they like, they enjoy the kind of game that they enjoy, they work hard on making that vision come to reality, and then they ship it. And they're like, okay, this is what we made. Do you like it or not? And I think that's the essence of game development nowadays, and I love to see it. But of course, you know, obviously, this is my job, so let's dive into an actual review of the game and talk about what's good about it, what's bad about it, and what challenges it might face in the future, and whether or not you should play it at all. By the way, I have a beginner's guide on the game going through all the mechanics as well on my channel, so if you are starting out in the game, you want to know what's different, what makes Arc Raiders unique, and there are a lot of unique choices they made in the game design and system design that make it different from its competitors and special in its own way. So if you want to know those mechanics, I have a separate video going over the entire game on my channel. So overall, again, I think the game is awesome. It's really, really good, well made, well delivered. And again, that's like a separate from subjective, whether you like it or not. It's well delivered. It runs well, it functions well, it looks pretty, the lighting looks great, the textures look great, the environment looks great, a lot of the assets look really good, and the loops are well contained and well thought out, right? Again, whether you agree or not on the decisions they made, they obviously had a vision, and they put through on what they wanted that vision to be. But I think that's also going to be one of the biggest challenges for the game going forward. I also want to touch on some strange decisions they made on how they're doing the server slam. So this footage is from the server slam, which is them just testing the servers. I think they made some odd decisions that are going to end up hurting them, at least in the short term on the game, and that is the restriction of content for the server slam specifically. Now, what I mean by that, when you jump in game, they restricted a lot of the content for the server slam, and I think this is going to give people a false impression. So if you're coming off of the server slam for Arc Raiders and like, that game wasn't all that, give it another chance, because there's so much more to the game that they, for whatever reason, just removed from the server slam that I think gives a bad impression that isn't actually representative of the game itself. The first thing is they locked out a lot of these maps. I think this was mostly just for matchmaking, to make sure that everyone's queuing for the same thing all the time, so that everyone's consolidated in one area, that sort of thing. But a lot of these other maps, if you played the tech test, are very different and super unique and provide a lot of different resources and that sort of thing. And I think when you actually have the full game on October 30th, that will give you a much better impression of what the game is. And some of the feedback that I've seen, I've been people saying it's kind of boring and simplistic and there's not a lot of detail to it. It's mostly just because, again, they heavily restricted what you can play. The other problem with the server slam is they greatly restricted the trader options, the material options, and all of the crafting. I think the game, like the loop right now for getting materials and crafting, is way harder than it normally would be. So if you see people out there saying that, like, oh my God, I can't get enough materials, or the crafting kind of sucks and that kind of thing, they're right, but it's also because they greatly restricted what you can upgrade, what workshops you can use, what workbenches you can use, what materials you can get, and I think that ends up making the game feel a lot worse because of that. So we go to the crafting station here. Some of these you can't even upgrade at all, and those upgrades are very important because it raises the rarity of the loot that you can craft and upgrade. It raises the quality of the attachments. Like, a lot of these things are just very basic because of what they are on the server slam. I I almost wish they called the Server Slam a demo instead of a Server Slam, because Server Slam obviously means that that's like the full game, but they're testing the stability of the servers and their network architecture and that sort of thing. And I think that gives the false impression. This is so restricted in the amount of content they have in the game that it feels more like a demo than anything else. So a lot of times you're playing with low quality gear or that sort of thing, and it just feels like the gameplay loop of getting materials, going to the game and getting it is so limited that it just feels like it's worse than it actually is or will be when the game comes out. And this happens in game too. Like, you'll actually have a lot more like really like high dopamine drops, like high rarity drops. There's not as many blueprints that are dropping as well. They also restricted what weapons you can use too. There's way more weapons, or at least there was in the tech test, that you could use that aren't in the Server Slam right now. So I just wanted to kind of put a note on that for people that are curious, that this is a very like narrow slice of the game that will expand quite dramatically when the game comes out. Whether that matters to you or not, you can make up your own mind. Like, maybe this was enough of a dose for you to get into it, but I want to kind of at least put that lens on it, that some of the feedback we're seeing from people on the game in general are really just because they're playing a demo version of the game that will be quite different once you actually get into it. And honestly, some of the difficulty problems go away too. When you have a lot more crafting options, you can make better weapons with better attachments. It's easier to get items, it's easier to get gear and augments and things like that. And you have a lot more variety of choices as well, which allows you to make your own play style and get through the game your own way. Next, let's talk about the uniqueness of the game, because I think this is actually going to be one of the crux points for the game going into the future. So there are a lot of things about Arc Raiders that are incredibly unique and different than most of the other competitors. It kind of feels like a battle royale to me when you actually play it, but it's not a battle royale. There's no circle, there's no fog, and it is an extraction game, but the way you explore the map, the way you move, and the way you fight other players is battle royale-like. And so I think, that element isn't part of it. It is also PvEvP. And in any game, I've covered this many times through multiple different kinds of genres. Usually there are people like me that, if a game's fun, I don't really care, I'll play it. But there are also people that are very much on one side of the spectrum. There are people that really like PvE and they don't want any PvP in their PvE. Like, they don't want, chocolate in their peanut butter or whatever. And vice versa is true. There are people that like PvP only and they're tired of doing PvE inside of it. And that's a super unique aspect. Like, you're fighting robots and you're fighting players and you're trying to extract and you're worried about, pressures that are coming from the outside. And then you have people in the middle like me, that it's just enjoyers. Like, they like the uniqueness of the game and how special it feels compared to its competitors, and they don't want the developers to change anything. And I think that over time, once the new car smell goes away over the next couple months, is going to be the biggest challenge for Arc Raiders. You're going to have people that wish it was only PvE, or people that wish it was only PvP, or people that wish it was more battle royale like, or people that wish it was more extraction like. And that is going to be the developers are going to have an uphill battle of, do they stick to their guns and just keep the game the way that it is? Do they split up the matchmaking into multiple queues where there's PvE only queues and there's PvP only queues? Or do they do event queues where certain things happen in certain ways? Or, maybe that for one day you can do PvE only, or maybe there's like a BR mode where there's actually fog and you drop down in different areas and there's different extraction methods and things like that. I think that is going to be an ongoing thing, and let me know where your head is at on this. And I've seen a lot of differing feedback, but again, I can appreciate the fact that it's something that they had a vision, they delivered on it, and this is the game that they like, and this is the game that they wanted to do, and I always appreciate that from developers. And we've seen this in other games too, like games like Dune Awakening, which just came out. There's a lot of people that went into the deep desert and they're like, okay, there's too much PvP in my PvE, and there's too much PvE in my PvP, and they're just constantly butting heads on it. And I hope that they find a middle ground between what the game that they want to make and ship, but also find a way to include people that are on either side of that spectrum to get involved. And there's a big moment on this as well, based on the robots you're fighting. I actually really enjoy the fact that the Arc robots are incredibly dangerous and diverse. And I think that over time, hopefully people begin to appreciate how special having dangerous PvE elements are to the game, because it creates a lot of variety in how you play the game as well. And that's because one of the gripes that I have with games like this is oftentimes you kind of get into the same rigmarole, the same monotony, right? You land in the same place every time. Like, people that play BRs, they generally have an area of the map they like the most, and they always start there and land there. Then they take the same route every time. However, because you're facing such dynamic encounters, right? You may have a route that you like to take, but the route is then flooded with robots sometimes. And the robots are incredibly dangerous. If you don't know how to deal with the Arc robots, especially the larger ones, they will just destroy you outright. Like, they're incredibly, incredibly dangerous. So because of that forcing function of the Arc robots in the map, it will force you to take new routes that you normally wouldn't take. But that also combines with the PvP too, because maybe you see a player in the distance and you want to try to avoid them, but also the route that's safer away from the player is filled with robots. And so it's like there's always this gamble no matter where you go. Do you face off against the Arc robots? Do you face off against the players? Do you risk looting a robot when there's players nearby? Do you risk looting a dead player when there's robots nearby? It's just, this game is incredibly stressful, but I think that's also a really cool and special aspect to it that is going to be, again, a point of friction for people that play. Maybe they like that, maybe they don't. It also adds a little bit more depth to the loadouts too, because you want to bring weapons and consumables that are good at dealing with the Arc robots, and same goes for players, right? Players are generally weak to lighter ammo rounds because they're wearing clothes and like Kevlar and stuff, but you need higher power rounds, heavy rounds against the robots because they're heavily armored. And so it kind of puts into that motion of, do I bring a varied set of weapons, or if I only have one weapon and that weapon happens to be good against players but weak against robots, that changes my strategy and how I play. And the same thing goes for the consumables too. There are consumables like noisemakers or lure or like the microphones that are really good at drawing robots into different areas. Like, you can use the robots to face off against players, like draw the robots to the players, or you can use it to get the robots away from you. There are robots of varying difficulty, like the Queens or the Bastions or the Rocketeers, which are incredibly dangerous. You don't want to mess with them, and if you do, you will end up getting punished in many cases. But also you have the players building into that too, that makes a really nice ecosystem that builds on top of it. Now, there's definitely some, other topics to talk about when it comes to the difficulty, right? Because the game is so stressful and dangerous, like even just taking zip lines, I feel like I have an anxiety attack every time because there's going to be turrets. You don't know if there's going to be a player at the top of the zip line that's camping it, the elevator, things like that. And things just get really crazy. And I can definitely see a lot of people not liking the stressful aspect of the game and how pressured you become. And I've actually seen people that say they're just going to quit because they don't like dealing with, their least favorite part of the game. Like, they don't like dealing with the robots, or they don't like dealing with the players. They want one or the other. But I think that once the game is fully live and we have all the weapons and all the consumables, hopefully people start to figure out how to use those to their benefit. There are a lot of consumables in the game. Like I said, noisemakers, deployable barricades. You can block, like you see this breach here, you can put those on the door. So you can close the door and then block it and barricade it. You can put a barricade like Fortnite wall up and use that against players. You can use noisemakers, shockers, smoke grenades. There are so many very useful utilitarian consumables that build into the ecosystem of the game that really make it feel special in its own way. I think it also gives a lot of tuning knobs for them going into the future for adding new maps with special like mechanics. They already have this, like they have the night raids that have increased presence of robots. They have areas that have less robots, right? So they can add more maps and queues and rotations and events that cater to different audiences, and it gives them more options for tuning the experience too. Like, if you went into a map that was full of Rocketeers, that would be a vastly different experience than if you went into a map that had almost no robots or was just mostly ticks, right? That experience changes dramatically because of the tuning mobs that it have, and it gives a good amount of variety in the game as well. And when it comes to the core gameplay, I think that it overall is really well delivered. Obviously, from the finals, they have a lot of experience with things like this. I think the shooting is pretty tight, most things considered. I think that the movement is really clean. The game looks and runs really well too. So if those are things that are really important to you overall, I think you'll want to kind of, appreciate that and make that part of the game. And hopefully that makes the game feel a lot more solid for people that are kind of on the fence. But I think that you kind of have to take a moment to get into the vibe of the game, right? There's going to be things that irk you, right? Because the game is so dangerous and so stressful, it does encourage what would normally happen in an actual apocalypse, right? Like if you watch, I don't know, like anything, like the Book of Eli or whatever, any like apocalyptic scenario, there's a lot of that situation that creates horrendous rat behavior, like people camping, hiding, you know, being very secretive, like just real nasty behavior. And also because you have so many threats surrounding you at all times, it does create situations where you can just get completely unlucky, right? Like someone spawns nearby. By the way, the game starts at 30 minutes, but even all the way down to like 18, I've spawned with 18 minutes left, so 12 minutes into a run late, right? So like they keep spawning players even though the game has been running for a while, and that creates situations where maybe you spawn in an unfortunate position, or maybe you get, as you're fighting a player, some robots come in and by luck of the draw, the robots focus you instead of the other player, and that's super unfortunate. And I think that there's going to be a lot of those moments as you go through the game that are very grating, right? Like it feels like, oh, well, obviously the robots focused me instead of you, so you won, but I would have beat you otherwise, and that sort of thing. That kind of moves into the idea of using your resources, planning your route properly, and being part of this scavenger raider that's actually using what you have available to succeed. But I can definitely see this is like certain mechanics that grate on people over time, where if you feel like you're being treated unfairly or you're being screwed over, that can cause people to quit the game outright because it just is like, okay, well, that just kind of sucks. Like I just got screwed over, or it just was unfortunate the way it is. And I think that if you're going into Arc Raiders, you have to accept that that's going to happen more often than you think because of just the way the game is set up. And especially in a game like this, where again, because so much is against you, it does incentivize, like game design wise for the player, it incentivizes rat behavior. Catching people unawares. This is me. I have unashamedly, I heard the elevator and I was already at elevation, so I may as well just take advantage. So I waited for him to go to the elevator, hid until he went in, took him down. That's just the way of the road, man. Like that's the apocalypse. That's the top side behavior. That's just how it goes. I think there's also elements of the game that you don't get to experience right now because of the way that the server slam is, like the full skill tree, getting your points allocated the way that you want, making your character better, making the traders more voluminous and having more items in part of it, getting more blueprints and crafting things, and all the different systems that exist outside of it. And honestly, like managing your inventory when the game is unrestricted is a lot more fun and enjoyable than it is right now in the server slam, because you're so restricted on what you can craft, what you can collect, and what you can extract with. But also the fact that it's going to be wiped too. You don't have that same investment level of, okay, well, obviously I can extract with this stuff, but who cares? It's going to get wiped tomorrow anyway. So, what's the whole point? So I think that I think they did shoot themselves in the foot a little bit with the way they set up the server slam, especially since the tech test was so limited and a little while ago, and not everyone got to play it, and now everyone gets to play the server slam, but there's restrictions on it. Hopefully when the game comes out, it's pretty solid and pretty heavy, and I think that the core foundation is really strong. But let me know what you think. What are your thoughts on Arc Raiders? Do you like the game? Do you not? Are you on the side of like you wish it was all PvP with no PvE? Do you wish it was vice versa, all PvE with no PvP, like I want to fight players? Or do you wish that they would segment and split their matchmaking into smaller queues, which obviously as the game goes on has problems with getting enough players to show up in the PvP areas or even in the PvE areas, and they have like different group sizes and all that kind of thing. But I respect them for doing the homogenized approach where they try to put a whole bunch of different genres and a whole bunch of different mechanics into one mixing bowl and hope that it works out. But I think that also kind of creates the difficulty in them creating a game overall. I actually have a strong opinion. I think this game is great, super special and unique, and I hope that it succeeds really well. But let me know where your head is at on the game and what your opinion is of the server slam down below in the comments. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.